The first Descendant is a game that, well, released on July the 2nd, 2024. Now that we are coming to the end of 2025, I wanted to kind of take an opportunity to review the game and, well, give a lot of people who haven't managed to play the game earlier in its life cycle an absolute history lesson as to what this game once was and show you what the real first Descendant was like before the game, well, kind of erupted into the mess that it is now. Not to say it is a bad game, because it's absolutely not. But this game definitely has some ups, and it's definitely had some downs. Significantly more downs than ups. But let me show you what this game was truly once about. Now, I've got myself a big bottle of water, and you should too, because we're going to be here for a while. So let's get on into it. Now, I will have gameplay of as much preseason stuff as I can find in my PC, showing you the old gameplay. This gameplay is of Enzo vault farming before the vaults changed. And inside here, you had to listen out for your sounds for the vaults. There was no map indication. There was no fixed spawn. You literally just had to listen out, and you didn't even know if any had spawned in the map, because there was no guaranteed or spawns of anything in this map. So if I do find something interesting in the gameplay, I will show it you and point out what's different, because now you have the map spawns. Enzo still is the best option for the vault, along with Nell, and there's a lot of things that we're gonna go through. So yeah, let's just go through with it. Someone named their fellow Andy Crap. That's not a fellow. That's a random player. They're not in our squad. Fellows didn't exist at this point in the game, James. So that's cooked. Right, let's start off. The 2nd of July, the first Descendant was released. My oh my, what an experience this game was when it released. We have very prominent moments like Colossus fights that we look at now as a joke that were, well, once heavily respected. The Devourer being an example of this. Devourer was a lot stronger before he even got nerfed and stuff like that. It was very sad to see. It was truly something that really made the game shine. And for myself and a lot of players, Colossi were the biggest reason that, well, I touched the game. And another thing is that, well, you can just see how the game used to function. The Colossi look like absolute beasts, and they, in this instance, just don't have any remorse for what you are, and they will just go all in. You can see even the damage numbers were slightly different. They didn't have commas between them or the integering and stuff like that, so the numbers did look very different as well. This was a fight in preseason with Devourer, a little bit of gameplay from that as well, so you know, you can see how the fight went. The game release, so what was the game like at the time? It was basically use Bunny for mobbing, and Bunny is the best Descendant in the game. Especially a fully invested Bunny was basically the best thing to mob with in the game, and you'd want to basically do absolutely everything with Bunny. And, well, majority of the content in the game basically did get used with Bunny, so that's something you definitely wanted to invest in. So what was bossing like at the time? Well, early in the game, there was only one bossing meta. It was Lepic and Glare. For as long as I can remember, Lepic with his, quote, Mega Man build, or as I like to call it, his nuke build, absolutely dominated this game. And the second build was Glare. You can see in this gameplay, I am running with a Glare player, and I'm fighting for my life. The pair of us are absolutely losing it to Devourer. I'm trying to jabait him. He's there knocking the pillars out. The Glare player respawns. This is what a Colossus fight truly should look like. And this is what I feel like the game misses out on now. Every Descendant is truly so powerful that, well, everything is just a joke. And it just stays like that, and nothing in this game has meaning compared to what it once was. So let's continue with this till the end of December. Oh, sorry, the end of July. which had which had Luna's release. Now, Luna on her release was an absolute clunky mess of a Descendant. Her symbols or her rhythm game were very out of sync, so the music itself did not even align to Luna's music symbols, which was kind of cooked, so the rhythm game was not rhythming very well. And another thing was that Luna genuinely felt bad to play. Her buffs were not strong enough, her DPS was very cooked, and Luna on her release was lacking and was very messy. Given that the game had already released for 1 month and they were pushing a new Descendant out, is a very bold thing for a game to do. When a game normally releases, they tend to take their time, let people sink into the content, and between a month or 2 months is when they usually drop a new character, so on and so forth, to keep the hype for a game up when it's high. But you can see with this one, they managed to go in and release Luna literally less than 1 year into the game. And on top of that, they also released Ultimate Valby at the same time. So they released their first Ultimate Descendant, which was Ultimate Valby, and then they also released Luna. Now, when it comes to Valby, there's going to be something you guys might remember. Just a touch. When it comes to Valby, you might remember the defense line. This was the holy grail of strats when it came to leveling up your Descendants, specifically Valby. Leveling any weapon up in here was considered an absolute blessing because you'd fly through your levels. Getting from level 0 to 40 on a weapon in maybe 30 minutes was considered like insanity. Maybe 45 to an hour. It was really something. And Ultimate Valby and Valby were basically the kings of this farm, and this farm was one of the best farms, if not the best farm in the game at the time. People use this to farm gold, to farm modules, to farm quite literally everything. And if you did not have Valby, this farm had people asking for nothing but Valbys. You would literally find yourself swiping your card to buy base Valby or to even buy Ultimate Valby, so that you were able to participate inside these farms, specifically with this. I was going to say, guys, I'm focusing more on the video, so I'm not reading the chat as much right now, but I can see both chats, don't worry. Yeah, okay, back to topic. So, Valby became a fast farming meta Descendant, and this is when people realized that maybe there's more to the game than just Bunny. Freyna at this time was very underlacking, and her toxic simply did not do enough damage, and Freyna was due some love and some support, so that would come soon. But this was considered the true meta of all farms at the time. Was Valby used in bossing? Yeah, she was. So how good was Valby at bossing? Well, we can find out soon enough, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. Now, this also says Gluttony get wrecked. We'll come back to that a little bit later because there's no Gluttony gameplay as of right now. Moving the time scaling and everything of this game a little bit forward, you had the god-blessed farm known as the Vesper XP farm. So the Vesper XP farm, holy, what a time. This farm was again founded around about 31st of July, so I'm going to leave it in the July segment of this video. This farm was here to basically help you level up. The way that this farm worked is you'd have a VS'er with her Hurricane, max range, and have a VS'er basically nuke the central bit of this spawn after your teammates or yourself jump in, and a non-attribute Descendant, literally any one of them, could be used to reset the void fragment shard so that you were able to just keep rinsing and repeating this. This was currently the best XP farm in the game, given that it lasts like maybe 5 or 10 seconds, and then you'd get yourself a burst of XP, a little bit of a reset, rinse and repeat, and maybe 20 to 30 minutes later, you were level 40 and you were insanely happy. You were like, oh my god, this is great, I'm leveling up so fast. This was again used primarily to level up weapons, to level up Descendants, and well, this is exactly what you wanted when it came to leveling for this specific part of the game. Now, let's talk about the next segment. This is going to be the part of the game where you realize it's about to get real. Well, let's talk about the invasions. The invasions were a very quick jump from June, July, August. Next month, or the second month of the game, we had Haley's release into invasions. Now, what did invasions do for the game? That's a very good question. They added a ton of things in. They added the invasions in for number one. They added in a lot of other things like bossing Descendants like Haley, and God forbid we're going to talk about the invasions because they had a pattern of their own. Now, with invasions, a lot of players themselves did not find them difficult, and well, I was one of them too. I did not find them difficult at all. There was a lot of people, however, in this community that did absolutely despise invasions. They were a mod where you would focus on solving a little pattern, and then you would basically have the gameplay pull up, and you would basically get rewards, and these rewards would be Haley parts. These mods got absolutely shafted. If you try doing an invasion right now, you will quickly see that they were absolutely cooked. The invasion specifically got absolutely dogged on when it came to their release. Their release was genuinely not bad, and I'm going to quickly pull up one of my YouTube videos to show you some gameplay of Invasion. Invasion was a genuine fun mod in my opinion, and a lot of people just didn't understand invasions. In Invasion, you could see here, the first thing that you got was a challenge. With this challenge over here, oh god, the aspect ratio is horrible. With this, the challenge over here in this one was shoot the corresponding color to the corresponding tile, jump on the tile, and then you would stand on it for a few seconds, it'd light up, and then you go to the next one. This was difficult for the community. The community quite literally could not solve this, which God, that really tells you the community for sure. And I think it was absolutely insanity that this was a genuine tricky thing. There was a few different types based off the mobs. So there was Legion of Truth, Order of Truth, Legion of Darkness, and Legion of Immortality. They all had their own unique puzzles. One of them had a puzzle, which is this one, basically just match the symbols to the ones on the door. Another one had match a pillar with the drawn, and one of them also had, I can't even remember what the third one was. It was a, no, it was this, I can't remember. If anyone else can remember what the third one is, please just let me know. But people were struggling to, oh wait, no, it was the drawns, it was the bio drawns. You basically feed a drawn with a bunch of brains, and then you kill the boss. All of these is basically just 3 rounds of the same thing and then kill the boss. And well, people couldn't handle it. Invasions on their release were very strange though, I'll be honest with you. With Haley specifically, Haley was locked behind a 2-week time gate of running invasions due to their drop rates being incredibly low. You'd get 2 Haley parts a day, and I believe you needed about 20 or something of each part, and then you were kind of forced into, well, you know, playing the invasions every single day, because even outside the invasion, your chances of getting Haley parts were very low, or basically next to 0. So invasions definitely had a good kick to them. With this now, you can see myself fighting the boss in here, and the boss fight in here genuinely wasn't even that difficult either. So yeah, a lot of people struggled incredibly hard with this, and well, eventually it ended up getting nerfed. So when was this nerf applied? This nerf was applied 5 days later. This was going to be a recurring theme, especially the 5-day number. Especially the 5-day number is going to be a recurring theme, especially when it comes to nerfs in this game. The community in this game specifically really does not like nerfs in any way, shape or form. Especially when, the community in this game does not like nerfing characters, but when it comes to nerfing content, they will do it within a heartbeat. It is a very interesting situation. And, well, we'll look at the recurring pattern over the time. So let's continue onwards. So Next up, let's have a quick look at one of the other invasions. Let's have a look at the Heart of the Fortress invasion. This one was not too bad as well, so let's have a quick look at that. Of course, the gameplay is going to be provided by myself again, just because I don't want to get copyrighted, so, you know, your boy had to put the shift in. So, Heart of Fortress, how was this one? This one was an example of the drones, so you basically just had a little bit of a pattern. On the release, there was pillars, and not all pillars would have a pattern on them, so you'd kind of have to look around the map to find the pillars with the pattern on them, and then just remember the order. The way I would remember it is based off what it looks like, and then I just slap a letter onto it. So for example, I would call one of them a star, I'd call one of them Y, one of them C, so on and so forth, and I'd just remember it as Y1, C2, X3, or star 3, so on and so forth. And again, the community could not handle a simple memory game. Now, they did change this as well, because as you can see here, the gun in the drop only has 6 bullets, and you require 3 bullets to kill one of the little nodes on the door, so you would be forced to do this a second time and go back and get it right a second time before you made it through the door. This also had the community in a frenzy, and people wanted this to change immediately, and they got all of the nerfs that they wanted, but ultimately, for what? I don't really think this was that difficult of a mod. And if you look at what the invasions are now compared to what they used to be, oh my goodness, this was an absolute different breed of just crazy easy shit. And a lot of people at this time were underbuilt, and I can understand it, but myself and other people definitely did post videos on it and how to do it, and even give builds. If you don't put the time in, you kind of can't really complain, in my opinion. That's just the way I'm going to look at it. Next up, let's talk about the rest of September. I'm gonna just leave the August section there, because this does technically come under there. So now let's actually progress and talk about September stuff as well. So let's continue with September. On the 12th of September, on the 5th, all of these had been nerfed, and Haley's content drop rate had been buffed. So Haley had a buff of all of the amount of drops that she would give per every single invasion, and then they also added Haley drop parts into dungeons like Magister Labs and a few other ones, so people could farm Haley outside of their dailies if they really wanted to put the time and the effort in. Next up, they did do some quality of life improvements. By that, I mean they just, fixed up a few things, added like colorblind assist, genuine good stuff. And you're going to see a few good things followed by a trend of, well, not good things. So we'll talk about that as we get to it. Then at the end of September, just to wrap the month up, they added public matchmaking to invasions. I forgot to mention that all of these invasions were solo only on release. If you couldn't do the invasion, you yourself were the problem. That was something that they definitely stuck by and, well, made sure that you knew. This game was very unrelenting, very unforgiving, and honestly, it was an absolute blast. The main fun in this game was building up and seeing your satisfactory results go in to absolutely nuke the daylights out of something. So don't get me wrong, you might disagree with it, but I think the game used to be exceptional. Next up, let's talk about October. Now, October. This was a big turning point for the game. This was a big turning point for the game. Let me just write this down real quick. There you go. October the 10th. October the 10th. Holy. Ultimate Freyna's release and the Deathstalker release. Now, I don't know how many of you guys remember the Deathstalker release, or if you remember the Deathstalker at all. Deathstalker was an absolute monster on his release. He was an absolute Giga Chad. He was a brutally good boss. I know we have kind of skipped over Gluttony, but don't worry. We will be coming back to it as well, because I didn't really show very much Gluttony gameplay, so I'm going to stack it in and show it you over here as well in general. So don't worry about that. Now, let's have a look at some Gluttony gameplay. well, some Deathstalker gameplay. Now with Deathstalker, oh my, oh my, oh my, this man was a fucking Chad. A lot of people don't even remember how crazy this boss was at release because, well, they never got to experience him on release. They just were not built up in the game. At this time, the ideal meta squad for it was a Eugen to heal, an Ajax to tank, an Enzo for DPS, a Haley or a Glay for DPS, and a Bunny for support. Now, genuinely, I think this boss was an absolute fucking unit. He was so good, he was so strong, and a lot of people even look at Deathstalker and they still don't like him, and that's fine. But let me tell you something, guys. If you think Grim Reaper is difficult, Deathstalker on his release was still more aggressive than what Grim Reaper is right now. Even though Grim Reaper has more HP, HP is easily fixable because you can just nuke him. Original Deathstalker had aggression, he had grit, he would constantly push his rings out, he had full aimbot as well, and on release, he absolutely shat all over the game. That's something that I just absolutely loved about this boss. And I forgot to also mention, 5 days later, Deathstalker was nerfed. Let's just add that in for there. Deathstalker was a genuine, very fun boss fight, and he absolutely annihilated everything in the game. He was the main boss that most people feared, and this is where the step up system kind of came into play for this as well. Another thing that was also around this time was 400% dungeons were released. This was a big turning point. 250% dungeons up till this point were kind of just, you know, whatever, and I'll quickly see if I can find some gameplay of some 250% dungeons. Fairly certain I can. This is not a 250% dungeon. Is this a 250? I need to try filtering through my own videos. I think so. Is this an invasion? I think this is an invasion. This is an invasion. We're cooked. Right, let me just go find click on a random video and hope for the best. Oh wait, I see the infiltration operation terminal. Okay, yeah. So, Unknown Lab, I was just showing someone how to set some stuff up, never mind. But 250% dungeons were a different breed in themselves. At this time in the game, you'd basically just be farming these religiously. Oh, found one. I think I found one. Yeah, I think I found one. Alright, there you go. Here you go. 250% dungeons. So these were dungeons where they had mechanics, they had time stop, they had everything that you were basically forced to use. And well, the main thing about this dungeon was the fact that you absolutely needed to basically have a decent setup or you were going to get ratioed. Now this is an example of a 250% dungeon. This will show you later in the mission that there's stop gate mechanics and all that sort of stuff. The biggest change with the 250% versus the 400% is 400% became a how much mass things can we annihilate before we end the mission type thing with just a small little boss fight. 250% dungeons, as you can see here, required mechanics. You had to go pick up the Vulgus biometric codes, and you'd have to get 10 out of 10 before you could move on to the next phase. Removing all mechanics of dungeons was a mistake, in my opinion, because it essentially just turned the game into a how much can we speedrun the game simulator with basically nothing else mattering. Mechanics were always rejected in this game. Well, I think it primarily became a thing because of the fact that people didn't like the dungeon mechanics inside of the Haley invasions. So this basically was a cooked piece of history that, well, doesn't really age, because even till today in this game, mechanics are definitely not a prominent thing. A lot of people still do not like mechanics, and the developers, I feel, are probably trapped in a bit of a position where they might want to add a genuine mechanic into a fight or something like that, but they can't because the community will ask for it to be nerfed or just keep complaining until it gets nerfed. An example of this is, well, Forbidden Sanctuary. I've had so many people complain about the boss fight, saying, well, the boss fight is boring, all he does is throw a bit of farts at you and stuff like that. And, well, yeah, because if the community complain about matching shapes, and they quite literally cannot match a shape to a number, I don't see what they can do either. The developers are not in a very ideal place right now. But 400% is something of an absolute different level of doggery. This is a 250% that we are seeing on screen, of course. So let me show you what happens when you slap this into a 400% dungeon as well. So I think, if anything, I will slap this video on screen, because I'm not 100% sure if this is the same dungeon. It might be. It's not the same dungeon. Sad. But let me show you an example of some 400% gameplay from Bunny. So a 400%, like I said, is basically just the same thing, except with 100 times more mob spawns and significantly more, damage and everything everywhere is the main thing that I would say. So you can see how this goes. The DPS, the aggression, it's just basically how much dungeon mobbing crap can you kill. There has been people that have been wanting 800% dungeons to be introduced, but given that they still can't optimize 400% correctly, and even 400% still can crash consoles and stuff like that, or PCs, I don't think 800% is going to be a very good idea. So how far are we in October? Well, Deathstalker also got nerfed, but we already mentioned that. 5 days after his release, people couldn't handle the aggression, so the Colossus got absolutely pummeled, and yeah, that's kind of just how it is. The nerfs in this game have been an incredibly prevalent thing, so that's what it is. Now, to end October off, they added something quite significant. They added something very, very, very significant, and this is a implanting system for the reactors. Now, if you don't remember, at this time, reactors for the weapons in this game were specific weapon mounting. Specific weapon mounting was your only option. I think if I show it in this clip, I'm not sure if I do, if you hover over your reactor, you will see that the reactors in this game at this time were hover over the reactor, goddammit. Come on, hover over the reactor. I know your bunny build's cool, but hover over the reactor. Brother's so cooked. Come on. Come on. Come on. Okay. So, the reactors. Let's have a quick look at them. Hover over the reactor. This guy's Goo Goo Gaga. Oh my god, who is this idiot, and why won't he hover over the reactor? Hover over it, please. I was using a chopped two pieces. Hover over the reactor, goddammit. But you can see how it is. The reactors have had quite a lot of changes as well. Number one being the symbol. If you look at this now, you may think this is a tech reactor for Bunny. However, I didn't even hover over the reactor. Oh my god, yeah, this guy is a fucking donkey. Oh my god. Yeah, so reactors, they've had their fair share of changes, right? The symbols on the reactor used to be so different. Every reactor had a tech symbol until they did a very, very big update with reactors, in which they absolutely overhauled the daylights out of the reactors and made a massive, massive change to them. You can see the symbols on them are different, and the symbol over there is different. You could see if it had a gold and purple stat based off this little corner, and you could see whether you upgraded it, and the max upgrade for reactors were only level 2. Now, am I gonna... I don't even think I saw them. This is so cooked. The reactors had specific mounting conditions. So if you hovered over a reactor for any Descendant, you would basically... Oh, did I do it there? No, I didn't. I'm so cooked. Oh, wait, I did. There you go. So with the reactors, you would see that... Hang on a second. You would hover over a reactor, and it would have a specific weapon mounting, and then it would have a type mounting, and then it would have 2 stats at the bottom. These stats were non-upgradable, and you were stuck with the color that you had, and the symbols didn't really matter too much, but this is what the reactors were like. And then at the end of October, they added an implant where you can have 2 weapon type mountings, so that you were able to basically crank it and go through with everything and have a nice, easy experience with all of the reactors. Now, that brings us to the end of October. Holy, we are making some good progress, and this is very slow. But end of October. Let's keep it moving now. So, November. What happened in November? Oh wait, I forgot to mention. They also nerfed Colossus, like Dead Bride and Hangman, around the middle of October as well. So this was also nerfing some of the other Colossi in the game too. So that's also another quick thing. But December. Now, December was a big turning point for the game because, well, Deathstalker was still running prevalent and we still basically had nothing significant. However, Void Vessel got released. Now, a lot of people are interested in Void Vessel, right? Right? All my homies love Void Vessel? Yeah? No? No? Apparently not. So Void Vessel was a very, very, very hated mod right off the bat. A lot of people first wanted Vessel specifically so that they could, pay attention and they could basically get the new Descendant, which at the time was Keelan. So Keelan and the dog came in at the same time, and people were hyped about the dog because the dog was cool. You know, we've always wanted pets and we've always wanted fellows. So, what happened? Well, the dogs were cool when you had them upgraded and everything, and they were very fast. And then they said that the dogs were picking drops up too fast, so they nerfed the dogs. So the dogs also got nerfed within 5 days. 5 days as well. That's at 7th December. Dog nerfed. Because the dogs were too overpowered. Excellent. So what else happened? Keelan. Now Keelan was an absolute flop of a Descendant, and that's me being incredibly generous with my words. Keelan specifically, he just did not bode well with the community, and Keelan was a absolute piece of shit. That's the nicest way for me to say it. Now, for Vessel as well, specifically, a lot of people were running this in hopes of finding, some form of solace and hoping that this was fun. Now, they also introduced these mobs over here, as you can see, that have a shield on them that you have to shoot. There were two types of bubbles. There was orange shield bubbles and blue shield bubbles. The blue ones you could burst with skills, and then the orange ones you had to destroy them with your weapons. And at this time, guns were not very strong in the game. But don't worry. January is going to fix all of that. Because, don't worry, guys. January is going to fix all of that. Because January is the best. But let's have a quick take back. Keelan was not liked because he was incredibly weak. Even on Keelan's release, the developers had to buff him over 400% for him to be worthwhile using, and even after a 400% buff, he was still kind of arse. Short water break because I've been yapping for 33 minutes straight. So, Keelan was weak. That was the truth. And because of that, he kind of missed the mark. A lot of people were excited for a cool black male Descendant, but, well, it just didn't really land very well with the community. And this becomes a very, very recurring theme. So, let's run it forward a little bit. A little while, or a few days even, after Keelan's release, we get 5th of December rolling around, which adds two new integral things to the game, which is Ultimate Sharon and the Infernal Walker. So, Infernal Walker and Ultimate Sharon, two absolute giga chads in the game space. So, how was Sharon and how was the Infernal Walker? Infernal Walker was the first step for people to, well, kind of realize that bossing should be something a little bit more than just shooting a gun. Even over bossing progression, there was a lot of upgrades over time. An example of this would be Molten Fortress got nuked. Every boss up to Molten Fortress got absolutely annihilated by Lepic. And then what did they do? With Gluttony, they introduced crit resistance. So now you've got crit resistance on Gluttony. This is going to make Lepic not a viable option. So, you know, back to the drawing board we go. That was kind of how this game worked. And then when they released Deathstalker, it was a good while before anything became memeable with that guy. Or even just hell with Gluttony for that matter. Gluttony became a menace. So many people were just choking on Gluttony. This man had everyone fighting for their goddamn life. And you were fighting preseason Glut like an absolute Chad. If you think we're melting him right now, this was probably what an almost perfect run for Gluttony probably would have looked like. Is something I would have said if I was an idiot. Even at this time, with genuine team composition, synergy, and requiring a Valby to cool him down, requiring an Enzo to give Glay crit and to give Glay ammo, and 2 Glays to deal DPS on Gluttony, my oh my, these fights ended up astronomically cooked. You were lucky to kill Gluttony in 2 minutes if you were to get a really good run in, because as soon as immunity kicked in, you were fighting for your life. This is honestly something that I just think was hella cool. And even just in general, you can see how we do this boss fight at this point. I was fighting for my life. I had no HP. I had nothing. All of us were just kind of frail, just running around like idiots, trying to survive and direct the balls towards the Valby with the purple ball to just nuke Gluttony. Genuine mechanics like this in boss fights will never exist again, because despite how fun they are and how practical and genuinely how amazing these mechanics are, there will be a very, very big crowd in the community that, well, they just can't handle the mechanics. And this is something that will genuinely never come back as well. I do really hope that they can make mechanics work, but at the time of this, it looks a bit 50-50. So currently we're in a very, very interesting position. Now I'm going to let the rest of the Gluttony fight play out before we move on to the next part. But Infernal Walker, I know we don't have Infernal gameplay, but just bear with me. He was a bit of a force to be reckoned with at the time, and honestly, you could still lock in and beat him. Haley was a good option, Valby was a good option, Viesta became a decent option, and it was just more so a how much can we do this as a squad type thing or solo. Abyss bossing was something that was not to be taken lightly, which is something that didn't really age well, especially given the directory of the game, so we'll talk about that a slight little bit later. This is kind of just, you know, what you would expect though. And bossing in this era was an absolute force, because a lot of people, like I said, myself included, fell in love with the bossing element of this game, and to see the sad state that it is in right now is kind of cooked. You can see here we've just got absolutely nothing left on Gluttony. I'm just gonna go in, knock him out with his immunity, and here we got a just under 3 minute run on Gluttony, and I start freaking out because this is a goated tier of experience. So yeah, once you hit a run like that, you are absolutely in the trenches and absolutely vibing and hoping for the best. Even all other bosses like the Dead Bride were an absolute, well, they were a joke to be fair, and Haley made bossing absolutely ridiculous upon her release. I feel like this really did start a trend. It started in the base game with having a very strong character. Name dropping them, it's Bunny. Having one very strong character that excels at one thing specifically definitely does add another layer of spice into the game that should honestly not be there. So even with this game in general, they had to keep eating into the power fantasy. Haley was very good at bossing, but she couldn't mob to save her life. So where did this put her? Haley was still an absolutely goated Descendant. She'd still work incredibly well, and despite an absolutely cooked run from myself and Ragmar over here, Haley was still one of the most loved Descendants upon release. One, because her sex appeal was incredibly high, and people still goon to her nowadays. So, you know, they did their job, at least. So, let's wrap the end of December up with that. Bossing was in its weakest state towards the end of December. People no longer needed carries on bosses because it was, well, becoming a bit of a joke. The Descendants we had were becoming strong, and our bossing selections and metas and setups became, well, quite easy. So bossing wasn't a problem anymore. So where did that put the game? It put the game in a bit of a position where you kind of had to acknowledge where or what is going on. So, like I said, bossing was cooked, so what else could they do? Come January, open up the new year, we got ourselves a new setup when it came to mobbing. Introducing Ines Rhea. Ines came out a month after Keelan, or close enough to a month after Keelan, and she was the new Descendant inside of the she was a new Descendant inside of a vessel, not in a vessel, inside of flipping Google Gaga, what's it called? Inside of Void Vessel. Yeah, she was inside Vessel. I'm tweaking. So she was the new Descendant inside of Void Vessel that, well, you definitely wanted to get your hands on her. So where did that kind of put the rest of the game? We now had a new Descendant, which was absolutely ridiculous at mobbing. Freyna on her release absolutely changed the mobbing game. For 400% mobbing, Freyna was like the queen, and Bunny was a very good solid option as well. But we finally got power grabbed. Ines absolutely rocked this game. So with that, she definitely changed the way that the rest of this game worked in general, and she absolutely changed it. Come the introduction of Purge a little bit later, Ines took a while to basically pick her steam up. People were thinking this character might not be anything special, and then they realized, holy shit, after they got their hands on her. Ines in her best form was an absolute force to be reckoned with. And Freyna was already considered an absolutely broken Descendant at the time because, well, Freyna's fourth ability could delete the bosses, and her mobbing abilities could nuke the hordes. However, Freyna had a problem called the elite enemies, and at this time Freyna could not nuke the elites, which I think put her in a perfect position to make her the baseline for this game. And a lot of people would disagree with me on that, and that's something I can completely accept and agree with. I can understand people having different opinions, but I think Freyna, without anything else like the trees, was a true perfect baseline for what a Descendant should have been. Either they match Freyna in bossing, or exceed Freyna in bossing, but they cannot mob on the same level of Freyna, or if they mobbed on the same level of Freyna, they could not exceed or rival Freyna in bossing. Had the game been balanced around this, because I do believe Freyna was the original baseline, I think the game would have been in a better place. But the power creep is something we're going to come back to because, God, the power creep never ends with this one. So let's just talk about the rest of January. They added Ines inside a vessel, and she was utterly, astronomically, and giga broken on her release. She was a Descendant that could nuke the entire room, ticked even faster than Freyna, and had practically no cooldown on her fourth ability, and because of the fact that she was built into crit, she was able to one-shot every mob in the room and two-shot the elites. Remember how I said Freyna had to stop and deal with the elites? Yeah, Ines didn't have that. Ines absolutely shat all over every elite at the time, and she just became something that was, well, truly, truly ridiculous. I think in general Ines was a force to be reckoned with, and even gameplay here of the original Purge 17, shout out to Jareth, we're running with me in this one, shows that, well, Ines was something. Even in a 4-man squad, Ines was the Descendant with her abilities that was just truly melting everything. Even Bunny at this time with her DPS, well, just significantly lacked compared to what Ines could do. And she was something that was so mighty and so over-animated in her fourth ability. If Freyna crashed your console, Ines would take the power grid down and the rest of the electricity in your house down with it. Ines was truly, truly something strong. And they had to nerf her animations because her animations, as I said, were absolutely nuking people's consoles. So this was something that was basically cooked, and yeah, it was just, finished. Then with that, we had the follow-up of February inside of Purge. People were mobbing all dungeons and everything, and Ines kind of became the one character that can quite literally do everything in the game with ease. She was truly the Descendant at the top of the game at this time. Now, they also optimized the reactors as well and added reactor optimizations. So this is when I believe they changed the reactors to allowing weapon typing instead of specific weapon mounting. An example of this would be scouting rifle mounting. This would allow you to hold the Blue Beetle as a scouting rifle and a few other weapons. Or if you had something like special weapon mounting, you could hold the Secret Garden as well as the Greg's Reverse Fate, and they would both be optimized on your reactor condition. So that's where January kind of wraps itself up. So it was in an interesting position to say the least. So next up, let's talk about February. February, holy shit. Like I said, this is where Purge went absolutely fucking ballistic. Purge 20 to Purge 30 was introduced. Ashley, could you send me a link to the Purge 30 gameplay if you've got it still, please? But yeah, Purge 21 to 30 got introduced, and let me tell you a story about Purge 26. Purge 26 was the ultimate gatekeep for basically everyone. They could act as gangster as they want or be as cool as they want, but you could not bypass Purge 26 on your own. This was where the meta of Descendants basically came into play as well. This is where truly people started forcing themselves into synergies with groups, so on and so forth. I think this is Purge 30 gameplay. This is Purge 30 gameplay, but close enough. I'll give you some Purge 30 gameplay. So this is when people realized after Purge 25, their Ines is not going to let you one-shot everything. So where did that put us? That put us in a position where team synergy had to be deployed. KDJ, thanks so much for the follow. I appreciate you. As you can see over here, this was an example of very early Purge 30 when me and some other players were even trying to still figure it out. You could see how much the bosses survived. We had Lepic picking the mobs up to crowd control them. We had Haley gunning the mobs down, and we also had Enzo providing Haley with ammo. This was the absolute basic variation of Purge, with X'Alisa deploying her hurricanes to do DPS to all of the mobs inside Lepic's nades as well. So this was the absolute basic example of Purge. Purge 26 had a boss which would aimbot you, and majority of people were just absolutely cooked with this. So this is kind of what it turned into. So with this is what the top of the game looks like, and a lot of people did not like it because they could not do it. So this eventually ended up turning into something more like this, and then it kind of ended up turning into something more like this. So this was a very simplistic variation of it, but it basically ended up becoming even more gun based. Firearms became very prominent because of the cores that we dropped inside of here, and these cores allowed for absolutely everything to go insane. With the 21 to 30 core rotation, this basically scaled the cores up all the way up to level 10. With the original release of Purge, cores only maxed out at a number of 7. For example, your maxed out fire rate increase would be 10%, but then you get core 10s, making it double all the way up to 20. So yeah, you got your power scaling. And to match how broken Descendant skills were, this is what their counter was. Did it work? Yeah, but in the process, it only made the game scaling even worse. When you thought the game had some form of a baseline with weapons and skills being balanced, it just kind of cooked everything. And it just put us in a position where they have shown that they want to go back and buff weapons, then buff skills, then they keep buffing skills, then they'll buff weapons, and you basically just run yourself into an infinite loop of buffing one and then buffing the other. So this is where all of this came into play and stuff. This was where the game really took a turn. When people got their hands on the cores, that's where everything started to get absolutely crazy. This is where majority of players as well complained about Purge, and 10 days later Purge got nerfed. 26 onwards was heavily nerfed. They decreased the elite HP, they decreased everything, basically because majority of the players or the casual players could not keep up. And I think that this is not a good call. When I had this time period in my life, I remember I was posting guides on how to make the Descendants for each team composition, each setup, how to build your Lepic, how to build your Glay, how to build your Haley and Enzo, so on and so forth. And, well, people used to hang out in my streams and stuff because I'd also help them, and they mentioned a lot of the time that it was such a grind to build this, but once I got it built, oh my god, it felt amazing getting the clear. And that's something I think was really, really important. Again, even with the higher levels of Purge, we had the god amazing debate between the Full Measure and Vash. What a absolute piece of cinema. When Full Measure blindly suggested and heavily indicated and basically said Purge 21 is the best farm for your cause, and Vash debunked it very quickly, saying essentially the correct answer is whichever cause, whichever Purge you can farm the fastest consistently is the better one. Even I remember at the time when I had people asking me, I was like, I don't think 21's the best farm. I feel like whichever one's higher is better. And it's nice to know I was right. This was also around the time where myself and some other friends went down the whole skill route. Even though Luna wasn't the most prominent Descendant at the time, you could still build Freyna into crit, and even Freyna would crit with some lower tier of mobs, like for example Purge 27 was still more than good enough to absolutely melt the mobs, still keeping a Lepic in the group to group everything together. But even at this time, Freyna gameplay was much appreciated, and Purge was genuinely the top of the game. It was one of the most fun mods where grinding it genuinely paid off for your time. A lot of people didn't like the fact that even with the higher Purge, you weren't guaranteed an X score, but don't worry, because our devs love us and they love nerfing things. They buffed the rewards by like a lot, so you were guaranteed like 5 X cores, 4 level 9 cores and 3 level 8 cores, so in total about 9 or 10 X cores per run. And then later down the line they added fusion. But as of this time, this is where February kind of just, you know, took its mark and kind of left itself over here. Now, let's talk about the ultimate change. This is where bossing became absolutely irrelevant. When you had these level 10 cores, every Colossus got absolutely melted. Now, Colossi fights were already in a basically dead state, and the Defiler and stuff like that was already kind of cooked too. Majority of the time, your Colossi fights would either become cooked, and I'm pretty sure this is some horrible Valve gameplay, but I'm going to show it you anyways, and yeah, let's just go in with it. This was me and Choco running at a duo, so like I said, trust me, it's going to be terrible Valve gameplay, but this was Defiler in a nutshell before the rework of the last dagger. Once the dagger became in with Glare, oh my, you're gonna see it very, very quickly. With this though, this is essentially what this fight turned into. It was just skill spamming and basically just running away from Defiler as much as you can. You know, just kind of how it is with the game as well. You can see him getting absolutely shredded, and Defiler was honestly one of the most fun Abyss fights in my opinion. I think that he was definitely a lot of fun to fight. I think he was a very big fan favourite, and yeah, I think this was genuinely a goated fight. Do I miss the Defiler? Yes, but he's also coming back into rotation. If they do not buff the Descendants, if they do not buff the HP on these Abyss bosses before they bring them back into rotation, may God help these bosses. But just to wrap this segment up of February, this is where, well, majority of the game basically met its death. and a lot of things in this game basically became useless as well. Even Purge over here had cooked runs. Everything was in a bit of a stalemate. Every character could do everything if you built up to it, right? And that's where we left it off. Now, here comes the fucking money. Here comes the fucking money. Now, what happens when you take that and you say fuck it and introduce a Descendant who is a one-man army for absolutely everything? I'm skipped the Last Dagger's buff, right? Because the Last Dagger got buffed, it became meta with Glay. Glay and the Dagger did everything, right? But what happens when you introduce a literal god into a game that is literally years ahead of your production? Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Serena Antitietta. That is what her name is. Now, the developers sat there, and hell, even the translator who got fired for speaking out against the gooning sat there that day on, I don't even know what the fucking date was, but it was in March, okay? And they were showcasing the stuff coming up on April and also showcasing what's coming out in March. Good God. This was the true beginning of the end for the first Descendant. Even the developers did not even know the fucking horror they released. Now, this time again was a very, very important time for the game. And not just because Serena was god levels of broken. This was when, well, Sigma came out. And if you don't know what Sigma Sector is, God, you're too young. But Sigma was an absolute game changer for this game. Sigma Sector specifically gave every Descendant an arcade tuning tree, and this will allow you to basically go absolutely ballistic with all of the damage with your Descendants. This allowed you to buff your skill power, and your tree would allow you to buff your cooldown, everything. And hell, they even went in and introduced multi-hit a little bit later. But they introduced arcade trees, the Tormentor got introduced, Serena got introduced, they introduced multi-hit modules into the mix on the actual game, and then they introduced two weapons called the ATAMs, the Truly Deadly Arsehole, the Hunting Dog, or the Ammo Dog, was now introduced as well. And this was all in one update. So ladies and gents, let me tell you how drastic this update was. Well, for number one, this update essentially made my channel. Oh god, where is it? Nope, we're cooked. This update honestly broke my channel. And this is where I became relevant to an extent, because I was one of basically the first Descendant. I was one of, if not the first person in the game to max every single Descendant's arcade tree out 4 days after Sigma Sector released. And I made updated builds for Descendants, Bunny, Valby, Freyna, Ines, Luna, so on and so forth. I went crazy with the builds that a lot of people were still kind of figuring out at the time. A lot of people were still kind of figuring them out at the time because, well, they just hadn't done the tree. So I was a massive step ahead of a lot of people, and I took it and made it a prominent thing and used it to my advantage to grow the shit out of my YouTube channel. Now, this was also around the time of Ines nerf being a thing that they spoke about. People were thinking that Ines is a problem, and for mobbing, she was. Ines could do everything, even so much so to the point where people would still use Ines over Serena just because they had Ines built. And that's just kind of how the game was. People invested in one character, and this one character could do everything, and they had a genuine feeling of a threat that the developers are going to change Ines. And, well, they would be right. However, we'll come back to that a little while later. Why? Because I want to talk about something else other than I want to talk about something else other than the thing with this. I want to talk about the Serena ATAM setup. Now, Serena on her release was of course a very strong Descendant. But how strong? The developers had no effing clue that the Descendant they released could one-shot the Abyss boss that released alongside it. I don't know whether they had potatoes testing their game or what, but oh my god, this was a fucking force to be reckoned with. You'd sit here, you'd charge your ATOMs up, and over there I didn't properly charge it up, so it took a second, but you could one-shot the Tormentor with Serena and the ATOMs. Was this the beginning of the end? Yeah, like I said, the developers had no idea Serena could even do this. So that was honestly not the best run because I didn't fully charge it. But at the same time, look at my GOAT right there. Look at a 7 on the number 1 on the Serena boards. What a Giga Chad. But this is basically what Serena was. An absolute goddess. She was light years, even to the point now where this video was released 9 months ago. Even 9 months later, Serena is still one of the best Descendants in the game. Would I say she's the absolute best anymore? No, but she's definitely top 3, if not number 1 still. It's a back and forth debate, but Serena is still at the top of the game, undoubtedly, right? So what else did that happen? The Sigma Sector trees went ballistic as well. A lot of the Descendants inside of here, well, basically tripled their DPS in their setups, and everyone had new fresh setups that required the arcade tuning trees to basically make them worth it. And a lot of people really hated the fact that, well, you'd kind of have to you'd have to go in and make your setup something new and farm this new and updated tree to make your DPS worth it. So, you know, a lot of people were like, holy shit. I think a lot of people just wanted to give it time to see what people could come up with, and it allowed for crazy things like permanent crits with Valby, and, you know, a lot of other DPS and stuff like that in the game, which basically broke scaling. This is where a lot of Descendants got a really big power increase from being kind of useless to actually okay, or okay to really good. This is where I'd say was the big turning point where Bunny became better than Ines because of the fact that they nerfed Ines, but we'll talk about the Ines nerf in a moment. Serena was becoming the true god of the game and everyone was using her for everything. They also added the Vesper's Hunting Dog, which is the ammo dog, specifically for Serena, and this is where they also nerfed Purge. Now, Purge nerfs are going to be something that comes very frequently to this game, but they did a health nerf again for Purge 21 to Purge 30. The purges that people were struggling on before. Now, here comes the money. I mean, here comes the April. I mean, here comes the Ines flashback. Holy shit. If you have anything to do with this Ines nerf, this is where it gets hella real. This is where the game basically pulled up, and this is where we get into the real shit. This is where Ines made the developers have an unreversible decision. Ines was already one of the most broken Descendants in the game, full stop. Ines was one of the most broken Descendants in the game, full stop. So what happens when you take action to take care of your game? I'll tell you what happens. You get yourself a big fuck you, because this is when people went back to the game, went over to the store page, and they review bombed the shit out of the game to the point where even now, till today, the reviews are mixed. Now, how long have they been like this? Well, since the Ines nerf. If we look at the graph, hang on a second. Where can I see it? The show graph, there you go. You'll see that this was the beginning of the game where people were positive and negative and stuff on its release. No other point in history does it matter apart from the end of March where they got over 1,000 bad reviews on Steam and then consistent 300 plus negative reviews, and even the negative reviews kept going basically ratioing the positive reviews. For a game that's not even a year old, this was an absolutely horrible look. And even now, till today, you still end up getting a fair amount of negative reviews to match the positives. Some days outweighing it, some days are almost matching it. So mixed reviews on this are completely fair. Bear in mind this only includes English, because obviously I speak English, so other languages can make it way worse, and other platforms also made this way worse. The developers realized that Ines is a problem for themselves, and that is why they nerfed her. She was too broken when it came to mobbing, and no other Descendant could keep up. Now, what was the turnaround from it? You know, what happened with it? Was it good? Was everything good? No. The developers are now fucking terrified of ever nerfing a character again. Serena was even more broken than Ines. However, the developers will never ever fix Serena, or will never ever do anything significant about Serena, specifically because of the fact that they do not want the game to get review bombed again because of a character nerf. Like I said, at this point now, the developers will nerf content as in flash. Within less than 5 days, content will be nerfed and adjusted. However, if you ask them to nerf anything like a Descendant, they will be absolutely fucking livid. They will start raging. They will start throwing hands. They will start bloody stamping their feet like children. It's crazy how the community scared the developers into basically killing their game. And I know killing their game is a strong way to say it, but well, you can't really say that they've not done that. Regardless of this game now, had the game been balanced back then, it might have kind of gotten away with it. At this current moment in time, I don't see the game getting away with it, well, specifically because of the fact that people are gonna, complain. And the developers will forever give in to what the people want, and they're too scared to lose players in a game that's already very hard declining. So, after the Ines nerf, how bad was she? How weak did Ines become, you ask? And the answer is, she didn't. A lot of players review bomb the game over Ines getting an actual nerf, but even in terms of turning her skills down slightly, she was still the strongest mobbing Descendant in the game at the time, and, well, she wasn't even weak. She was still getting the same clear times, she was still absolutely dominating, and she was still shitting all over everything inside the game, even to the point where, after the nerfs, the devs wanted to nerf her a little bit more. She was still a problem for them after her nerf, and just because they turned her spread down, slightly turned her DPS down, and all of that, she was still one-shotting and annihilating everything in the game without a problem. Now, a lot of people really didn't like this, but Ines truly was not even a bad Descendant. In fact, it moved us away from her tech setup to then introduce her to the singular setup, which is even better for mobbing. You do plenty of damage on your first and your second and your fourth ability, but the only change being that your third ability now gets built into singular like it was meant to be, and Ines can one-shot every dungeon boss at the time in the game with her third ability instead of gambling it on the aim of her third ability with hunting hounds on. So the singular setup genuinely was a nerf to Ines, but introduced us to something stronger for Ines. So, was it a nerf? Not really, but it was something that was very cooked, and a lot of people were really complaining about this. April was a very spicy time in this game, so let's keep it going. Next up, we have April 17th. That was Ultimate Blair's release, and this is where Purge truly became broken. Now, for those who were paying attention, in the gameplay previously, we would only use skills as a support in Purge to back up our firearm, so we'd always be using weapons and stuff in Purge primarily. Now, this is where it changed because they allowed skill resistances to go absolutely nuts. You were able to now just annihilate the shit out of everything using skills. So this is where skills became better than guns in Purge, especially for nuking Descendants like Bunny. 2 bunnies were able to out-mob Serena, for example, and you'd ideally want a Serena in the squad just for the boss, but this is where mobbing and skills kind of really took over. And for them to make the decision of introducing skills into the only firearm heavy mode in the game really set the precedent of the fact that they have absolutely no fucking clue as to what it is they are doing. Because they should not have done that, in my opinion. Leaving a mod specifically based for firearm heavy setups would have been a better thing to keep in the game, because it makes it so that a lot more gunning characters have a lot more meaning. Given that meaning and everything in this game has kind of been diminished since Serena's release, it kind of does change everything, and you know, it just shows you, well, how much this game has changed, and well, how much this game is going to change even further in the future. Remember, this game is still only a year old, so there is still space for this game to grow even bigger. So remember that one too. Now, April 17th as well also had a reset, or not April 17th, but a little while towards the end of April, they had to reset the leaderboards. Shout out to 7TV. Now, Veil Analyzer had a bug, which was one of the new modules introduced in Sigma Sector, and this weapons bug would allow you to, well, essentially nuke the daylights out of mobs and everything, so you were truly, well, you were truly annihilating everything. So you had absolutely zero problems with nuking the shit out of everything, even with one setup, and it made weapons broken, so broken to a point where they literally felt like they had to reset the purge leaderboards because of the module. Now, reactor or leaderboard resets is something we're going to come back to, because this is something that happens more often than you'd think. It's a very cooked scenario. Now, just to wrap the end of April up, they also removed fusion void reactors. So, up to this point in the game, you would have to use void shards along with a fusion reactor to open up your amorphous material patterns. And Colossi was your other option. Now, this point in the game, in April, they removed the need of the void shards. So, plenty of players have thousands of shards sitting dormant in their inventories that I think they might have even nuked from your inventory, but players had them in the inventory and that was just a thing, and now they are useless. Another recurring theme, they like to make stuff in the past not matter anymore, and then we take it from there because even they don't know what they want to do with it anymore. Now, that brings us to the end of April, so let's have a look at where we are now. This is going to be the best bit. We are going to be in May. Now, May wasn't a very important month. I beg to differ. Plenty of people loved May for the wrong reasons. Now, May started off with the developers announcing that they're going to PAX East to show off the new upcoming Season 3. So you'd assume that when you have an opportunity to ask the developers any question at PAX East, you would ask them something like, is Season 3 going to be fun? Is Season 3 going to be worth it? Or is what even is going to be in Season 3? So the most important question that got asked in Season 3 is the following.
And one more thing, so on Luna's recent swimsuit skin, her fingernails are painted black, but her toenails are not painted black. Please fix.
That was the moment where this absolute donkey made history for all the wrong reasons. Now, don't get me wrong, this game is a Guna game, but I do not get strung and attached to a Guna game because of who I am. Gooning is not my thing. But after this clip happened live on PAX East TV, or whatever the hell you want to call it, good God, TFD's reputation took a nosedive. I had my own friends message me telling me you're a bloody donkey and go lick Luna's toes, because this is the representation of the community that got put forward the most. A lot of people will not touch the first Descendant, quite literally because of this one clip, because they don't want to be associated with a game that has a player base like this. So that was the biggest meme and the biggest thing out of this entire live stream. Even if you look at the the replay on this, the most replayed part is the bit where this man asks the developers to fix Luna's toe color. So that was an interesting start to the month. Then a few days later, they nerfed the daylights out of Purge again. So now Purge had no elemental penalties, meaning you could literally wake up one day, decide you're going in there with, I don't know, Lepic, and even Lepic in a mission where you're meant to be using an electric Descendant would still technically give you the most damage possible. Skill penalties were completely removed. Now, another big thing was dynamic motion. Holy shit. Dynamic motion also made its way into the game in May. So after the toenail fiasco, they added jiggle physics for your boobs and for your ass on female Descendants only. What a way to make sure your community are never beating the allegations. So that kicked in as well in May. And that brings us to something else as well, which honestly, God, it was something. It was something. Holy something. And people worshipped this feature basically since the beginning of the game, asking jiggle physics when, and saying that it's coming, and so on and so forth. It was just disgusting in my opinion, but you know, to the players who use it, you know, whatever, to each your own. Genuinely not my thing though. Now, to add this, they also added the Ice Maiden Abyss Colossi. Now, the Tormentor got one-shotted by Serena. So, as a developer, how are you meant to respond? They respond by introducing the Ice Maiden, which is another boss who is weak to fire, so Serena should be extra effective on her. Absolutely the greatest call. So, what happened with the Ice Maiden? Well, let's have a quick gander. The Ice Maiden, well, immediately and off the bat, kind of gave us something that we expected. Serena killing this boss in under 5 seconds. Now, how quick did Serena kill it? I think it was under 4 seconds, actually. But it depended on the multi-hit setup. Essentially, using a fire restored relic to proc as much of your fire element as you possibly could. And then you would basically use that along with the multi-hit feature or the new multi-hit mods and everything that got implemented into the game. So you would take advantage of the multi-hit chance and multi-hit damage, which then later got added to cores in the game, which is when they absolutely allowed this to go ballistic. And this is where the developers had enough of Serena, in my opinion. Where Serena kind of basically just, you know, shat all over everything else in the game. They made sure that Serena, well, had a fight, right? No, they didn't. Serena shat all over the Maiden, and, well, it was just as simple as that. So, what did the developers do after that? Because this is pulling closer towards the end of May. So, yeah, this is where it is so far. So, what did they end up doing? They ended up introducing something a little bit later to counter Serena. I also realized that I kind of skipped Ultimate Blair in April. Basically, Blair got done over. He got done dirty. He got his Ultimate Variation released inside of an update with literally nothing else. It was literally go fight do 4 dungeons, get the material patterns for it, and then open Blair up and realize he's still good, but not as good as he should be. He still lacks range and a little bit of quality of life. And then his story was an absolute shit joke as well. Horrible story to match it. Yeah, Blair kind of got shafted as well. But don't worry, it's because he's a male and the developers do not care about males. So that is pretty much all that you need to know for that one. Now, on to the next segment. This is going to be the fun one because, well, this is where it gets real. This is where the devs introduced Maiden Challenge Mode. Now, you'd be thinking, why would a Abyss Colossi need a challenge mode? Well, it's because Serena was so far ahead of the game, they had to make an entire new difficulty mode to basically catch up with Serena. Now, Serena as a Descendant is absolutely fucking ridiculous because she's already annihilated everything in the game. She's broken every record, she's ruined every game mode, and on top of that, you now give Serena an entirely new mode specifically because this one Descendant is so much stronger than the other. So where does that put the rest of the game? It puts us in a cooked situation. Serena genuinely should have been nerfed, but after the backlash of the Ines nerf, the developers were terrified, and it kind of left them with no position and no right to ask for anything. They did not want to lose players again, with this game already declining in player count consistently due to lack of content and repeatability. A lot of the content in this game was basically just dungeons at this point, and if you were sick of running the same 6 or same 12 dungeons 1,000 times, yeah, you kind of just had to suck it up and keep going. So the game had very little to do in that aspect. Now, a little bit later in June, still around the 19th update, they had to reset the leaderboard again for Purge, because now Serena had a thing where if she used 2 last daggers instead of 1, she could loop Firing Fiesta, which basically would give you infinite ammo, and Serena could now fly around with infinite ammo. So instead of patching this for every single variation, like Spray and Pray for special rifle weapons, special round weapons, and Firing Fiesta for pistols, they just only patch Firing Fiesta. So over the next 6 months, you'll see it coming back in Colossus fights, so on and so forth, because they just didn't patch every variation of it, which is a big silly move on their part, in my opinion. So, you know, that was cooked as well. And this is where the devs absolutely lost it in terms of DPS balance, because they introduced multi-hit, yes, multi-hit into the cores. Multi-hit already with just modules was enough to nuke Ice Maiden, so what happens when you give them to the cores? Well, with Serena's 4th ability scaling, this went ballistic and did ridiculous levels of damage to absolutely everyone and to absolutely everything. The game meta at this time was still Ines for mobbing, and Bunny for mobbing, and Freyna for mobbing, after the trees made all these Descendants decent. Sharon and Valvi were on the rise as well. Viesa was good. Every Descendant was okay because they had some form of a new build due to the Sigma Sector arcade tuning and everything. And this was also where Mutant Cells started coming into play as well. So, that basically wraps up June. They had to make some nerfs, they had to do a bit of this, they had to do a bit of that. And, yeah. The game was still approaching a peak where players were frustrated because the developers were talking about the new future of the game, which was Season 3. Season 3 was the ultimate hype train for this game, and people had this ideology of if anything is going to save this game, it is going to be Season 3. Season 3 was going to be the redeeming god factor for this game. It's going to be the dream that we've all had for this game, so on and so forth. Just for reference, the developers have even themselves said Season 3 is our dream vision for this game and we can't wait to make it come to life. So, let's just bank on that hope of Season 3 is going to be excellent. Which brings us to the end of June. So, at the end of June, we have Season 3 going crazy, and yeah, that's pretty much that. So, that is June done and dusted. So July, what happens in July? July, we celebrate plenty of really good things for the game. The game had its release of a mobile application, which at the time of downloading, my Samsung security said the application is a virus. So yeah, I think the game was quite secure. Or the app was secure, and the app kind of just lacked reason, in my opinion. You could use the application to check your builds, and that's pretty much it. As of right now, there is trading and everything, and trading should obviously come back into the application and allow people to trade in there to make it significantly more worthwhile and more worth your time. But as of the time of recording this, we have absolutely no idea whether they are actually going to do that or whether they will not. So let's just hope that they do. Now, the developers also had a absolutely astronomical milestone. Congrats to the first Descendant because, well, the 2nd of July was the anniversary stream for a 1-year anniversary. For any game to live a year, it's a genuine achievement. And I think that every game should genuinely be celebrating the fact that, you know, they're doing well for themselves, so on and so forth. So, there's that. Nicholas, thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate that a lot, my man. Thank you. So, the game had a lot of stuff going on in general, and I think that this was like one of the moments where a lot of things went up and a lot of things went down. They did care about the upper bracket of everything, I feel, and this is where they started to pay attention to like a lot of the things in the game for the most part. So that was a really good step in the right direction, in my opinion. And yeah, the anniversary stream. Let's talk about that. So the anniversary stream was it was something, bro. The anniversary stream in itself was an absolute it was a show. So let's pull the stream up and have a quick look. Now the stream primarily showcased upcoming content in season 3, and yeah, it was showing us Nell, showing us some cosmetics, so on and so forth. It showed us a lot of things that players should be looking forward to. So what else did it show? Ornery Biscuit, a content creator for this game, also did a face reveal in this stream, which kind of made it as the most replayed moment. Shout out to Ornery Biscuit. And the community went into an absolute frenzy over this. A second to Ornery's face reveal was the part of my career where I might as well have been exercised. So I went up on the big stage and I asked for a nerf. I'm trying to find the timestamp, but I in fact did ask for a Serena nerf at this point. And this was when Serena was at the top of the game. Asking for this nerf on stage got me a lot of hatred, a lot of heat, and just people hated me in general because I'm asking for nerfs in this game. I can't even find the timestamp. I might actually be cooked. But why are you giggling? I'm giggling because this shit was so funny, man. For an anniversary stream, this was actually so cooked when you think about it. Bro, I'm trying to find it. What timestamp did I get ratioed at? Does anybody know the timestamp? Was it after Moxie? I don't even know. There's Denny. A lot of creators that even at this point had kind of quit making content to this game were invited, and a lot of and one of the other biggest creators at the time, Sen, was not invited either, which was insanely cooked. Ah, here we go.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This was my one claim to fame, and the reason why I got so many subs overnight. It was so funny. So
Okay.
let's I'll just let the clip play in its glory, because you know what, proud of it, stand by it. Let's go.
Question number 1 is, would you consider adding more elements into the game? For example, when I first started playing the game, I thought that Valby would be like a water type descendant, but it turns out she's an attribute. So would you consider adding like other elements?
Bro, this audio is so choppy. Hold on, skip.
My second question is, will
Okay, here we go. This is the bit that matters. This is the bit. I'll turn the volume up just so you guys can hear it one more time.
Serena ever get a meaningful nerf, one that like actually destroys half of her power, so that she's more in line to like the other descendants in the game?
True music to my ears. If you look in the corner, you can even see Judge saying, "Fuck this, bro." This was a goated moment, and absolutely made or broke my career. And I had so many people. Wait, if we can see the YouTube chat, I don't think we can. I think we can't see the YouTube chat. Yeah, the live YouTube chat for this is gone. But oh my god, if you saw the live YouTube chat, you'd see that people were asking me to quit the game and go die. It was very pleasant. One of the most encouraging and warming and welcoming YouTube chats I've ever been a part of. So, yeah, the game was in a great position. I'd asked for a nerf, and I got loads of hatred and also loads of support. It was a very big mixed bag. But I asked the question that absolutely nobody was willing to ask. Will they actually truly balance this game? Essentially, their response was, no, we're not going to nerf Serena. Everyone is going to get buffed for her. And then they also mentioned that their baseline for this game is going to be Serena for the gunning descendants, Ines for the skill descendants, and the last dagger as a weapon baseline for all the weapons that get introduced in this game as well. Something that we're still going to keep in mind till today as well. So there was that. The anniversary stream got wrapped up. Moxie got caught lacking. Henri did a face reveal. Sen wasn't invited. Who cared at this point, okay? So there was a lot of things, a lot of back and forth, all of that, you know, yada 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 yada. So bringing this stream to an end, because it was a 5.5 hour stream, it was a rough experience, don't get me wrong. But what did they do after this? Yeah, they went back to the game and stuff genuinely changed quite a bit. They made a big nerf to Purge the day after, so Purge got its biggest nerf yet. They simplified Purge and they deleted from Purge 1 to 30 and changed it to Purge 1 to 10. So they simplified it and then they added rotating tile sets in, and this was when the hype for Season 3 was at its all-time high. Myself personally, I farmed like over 1,000 catalysts in preparation for, oh my god, Season 3 is going to be the best thing ever. So on and so forth, so on, you know how it is. Everyone was getting hyped for Season 3. So what happened when Season 3 released? Season 3 was the most anticipated Giga Big Brain Titan that, well, everyone was looking forward to. So what actually happened when this season released? Let's find out. So let's skip over to not July. Skip over to the end of skip over to the end of the month and over to the 7th of I can't even find the gameplay for right now. We're cooked. Alright, you know what? I'll just grab some gameplay from my YouTube channel. That also works. So let's go to the big release of Season 3. What happened? We had so many things happen, and one of my favorite things, the nerf. We'll come back to that. So Season 3 began and we got a big update. Or a little while after the stream, we did technically have a demo before it, but the main thing was Season 3 was going to be a very big release and people were insanely hyped about it, so on and so forth. I even myself spent like 5+ hours before the actual game released into doing a subathon. Hundreds of people were here. It was really interesting, and I started off by getting Nell and leveling Nell all the way up, and then getting her arcade tuning done, and you know, just seeing what Nell was about, because she seemed really cool. Nell was a strong descendant, had a good skill build. Her gunning build, which was kind of her main advertised thing, was kind of shit, and she just became a skill descendant. And honestly, as far as balance goes, I think they truly released Nell in an almost perfect state. Apart from her Asive being a little bit clunky at times, and her memory leak literally breaking the game, crashing people's lobbies, and making Axion an absolute god-awful experience, with a combination of Nell, Ines, and Serena, you were doomed if you wanted to play Season 3. This ability here, you can see her second ability, quite literally caused the game to crash. Perfect timing example of that, for that matter. But this game was in utter shambles when Season 3 launched. Matchmaking wasn't working. You'd teleport into 500 different dimensions. The game was quite literally in the worst and most unplayable state when this season launched, and that doesn't even begin to cover what Axion was. Holy shit. Axion was the biggest slop of big grey bollocks, water bum poo poo. Axion was just a big field of literally nothing. Out of everything that you could see over here, it was grey, it was lifeless, the weather cycle was shit, and honestly, it was in a legitimate unplayable state. Now, I did, despite everything, put my time into this and tried to do as much as I could. This is also where trigger mods got released into the game, and this is where the damage and the DPS and the setup and everything also changed as well. Along with Season 3's release and Nell's release, we also had the Stormhanger Abyss Colossus release, which Nell was a very good option for. We had trigger mods. This is where the MP dog also came into play, so the Husky, if that's what you call it. And then we also had the game's first collab. We had Nier Automata collab, and this gave us 2B and A2, which was really fucking cool. Big fan of Nier as a franchise, and all my homies prefer Replicant. Life's hard. So that was the main selling point of Season 3. A big empty field with 8 missions, 4 bike races, horrible memory issues, and a wall crasher. A raid that you could do every hour, and the premise of the raid was you can fight him once an hour, and the developers were asking about team compositions, big hard Colossus, how are we going to take it down? Deploy the Serena, am I right? So what does the developers say when we said, guys, we're going to use Serena? The developers looked the camera in the eyes and said, please don't take 8 Serenas. If that doesn't tell you your character is broken and requires adjustment, I don't know what does. The developers just saying, please don't use 8 Serenas is the equivalent of telling a toddler to not mess about. It's not going to work. And it didn't work when, after quite literally 4 days or 3 or 4 days, 7 Serenas, or 6 Serenas, a Sharon, and using the Excava got a literal sub 20 second clear on this boss with over 4 billion HP. So they took measures to try making Serena not work in there over time, but it did not really work, I'll be brutally honest with you. So what else happened on August? They also nerfed the invasions again, because you remember them invasions that were very, very, very difficult a year ago? Yeah, there's people still complain about them now, and I'm not even joking. I think I could actually tie my hands behind my back, put a blindfold over my eyes, lie back and play with my pinky on my toes, and I think I can still get the invasions done. That's how easy they have come. And you really, really, really you don't even need to look at the game to play the game at this point, especially with invasions. You can literally just go press all of your options, and one of them will work, and it will genuinely complete the mission. So that was August nerf for invasions. So what else happened in August? Holy August, my beloved. Now Nexon did an absolute solid in August, right? So let me pull up and let me find the YouTube video I made on it. So Season 3 was their magnum opus for the game, right? And they wanted to do as much as they could for Season 3, and that's something I can completely understand. But holy shit, they went about it in the wrong way in every way, shape, and form. So what did they do with this? They decided to do they decided to push towards a lot of things. And it was not a positive thing when they decided to push towards an AI promotion. Now, I think the video will play it very shortly in the intro, so let me pull the video up of the AI promotion. Dropped on Twitter, and I've seen this.
You can mark enemies for extra.
So let me show you this. I'll pause the music and turn this up so you guys can hear the true glory of it. Guys, it is a video.
Now, she is a telekinetic powerhouse who can mark enemies for extra damage and support allies with shields and increased coverage. Click the screen to join the game now. Oh my god, the big boss wall crasher is invading. I'm going to defeat it with my new Descendant Nell. She is a telekinetic powerhouse who can mark enemies for extra damage and support allies with shields and increased...
From the official First Descendant TikTok as well. And this was also on Twitter and Snapchat and some other social medias as well. they used literal AI advertisements. And then they made a statement saying we didn't do this. It must have just got past our filters and stuff like that as well. But you do not make a promotional video and post it on several different social medias without a single human being looking at it and thinking that, yeah, this AI is a good job. This was an absolute clusterfuck, and at the time of this as well, they have so many creators, and I even made a short video talking about the Nexon creators and how Nexon's creator program is trash, creators for the first Descendant feel undervalued, and just in general, they don't really hit the mark very much, and they don't do a very good job in showing us that they care about us. One of my videos about this was this one over here. Let's talk about content creators and Nexon's practices. The main content creators off the top of my head, even for this game, at the time of this video 3 months ago, was Senevades, Ornery Biscuit, Judge Grey, Real Agent Robot, Moxie, Full Measure, Low Budget Gaming is a solid one, Songs of Rage is a solid one, French Reaper, 7TV as well. There's some Twitch streamers only like Benoit, Linz, Plain or Simple, stuff like that. There's a lot of other streamers and stuff, but if you ask me from 3 months ago to now, I can probably count the amount of people that upload consistent videos on one of my hands, because these guys are all playing other games. It gives you a very big continuum as to see, well, what are other people doing? The game has to keep you enticed and give you a reason to keep playing, and at the time of this, Nexon just shat all over their content creators. Even if I was one of them type of people to hold grudges, I would remember when they ask in their Nexon dashboard for people to make promotional videos or make sponsored videos, which they did ask a while back. I'd still remember in the back of my head that they chose a fucking AI ad over me. And it's one of them things that just doesn't sit well. And even the community were very outraged. So shout out the community for that. They were absolutely outraged about the fact that they tried giving us goo goo gaga donkey fucking AI ads instead of actually caring about their content creators and working with literally any one of us to produce a proper video. So that was that. Then here comes the 18th of August, because if the shit doesn't pile on, it is gonna now. Holy Wall Crasher exploit. This was a fucking good time. So, Season 3, as if anything can't get any better. The game releases an absolute game-breaking exploit, which kind of cooked the game in general. So, what happened, you may ask? So, what essentially the exploit was player 1 could go into a wall crasher, and they could be fighting a wall crasher. Player 2, in a completely different lobby, as long as it was a lobby of 8 players, could invite player 1 into the lobby, and instead of this working and saying, oh no, the lobby's full with 8 players, instead it would take player 1 and player 2 out and create a brand new instance of player 1 and 2 spawning a brand new wall crasher in and having their own private lobby for wall crasher. So again, I got the invite, I accepted it, and then you can see here, invite received on the left screen. I accept the invite, and boom, we have now created a brand new instance for Wall Crasher with our own private lobby. You will even see the screen on the right will eventually get taken and put into a brand new lobby as well. And this was something that was being exploited to hell and back. Wall Crasher at this time did not have a points cap, and the DPS was basically the way you would get as much points as you can. So you'd want to basically do this, an infinite loop, and get as many points as you could possibly get for your wall crasher. Hell, even if you wanted to spawn a lobby with just 2 people in and continually farm points, it is possible. If you had a bunch of people who'd work together, you could easily loop this 1,000,000 times over, and there was people who did that. Shout out to my Saudi Arabian people and the French people. I love you guys. And yeah, there was this where it was a legitimate thing, and people were no-lifing it. Initially, when this first got released into the game, or once this first became a major thing, there was also a way to basically keep it going, and with that, you were able to get infinite drops and infinite points and then you'd use this to farm ridiculous drops and everything. People were really outraged by this, and then in the second instance of the Wall Crasher, an entire month and a half later, when they reset the leaderboards, that's when they patched it. And for someone like myself who played the leaderboard basically legitimately because I was subathoning and I spent literally 18 plus hours a day playing this game for over a week of Season 3's release, I was almost at the top of the board, or I was at the top of the board. I fell through it gradually, and at the end of it, I basically just about didn't make the board because I was not going to put my time into a board where people were quite literally exploit farming the board. So the leaderboards in this game have continually been nerfed, resetted, changed, exploited, and the developers never seem to give a shit. So don't bother with the leaderboards, is the simple thing that I will say. So that brings us to the end of August. Holy, August was a month and a half, right, guys? It was a month and a half. So, let's have a look at September. Now, September was another interesting month. September allowed the release of Ultimate Luna, and Luna was another strong Descendant in the game as well. Now, Luna was a Descendant that was incredibly hated. So, what happened with Luna? They primarily made Luna in a way where she kind of didn't play with a lot of Descendants. She would have a buffing build and then her DPS build, but then they introduced Pussy Mode Luna for a lot of the people who basically don't know how to play a rhythm game or can't press buttons to a beat. So they essentially made this a very simple version of Luna called Battlefield Concert, which allows you to go crazy. She does great single target damage, and it's basically the easy version of Luna for people who don't really understand or can't play the rhythm game, because genuinely skill issue. She's a strong Descendant with the setup though, don't get me wrong, and her thirst trap video or her music video was also incredibly cooked, so they did a lot of stuff all throughout here. And with Luna's release, because the developers can never get anything right, they also broke Luna on her release, and she had a bug called Infinite Fever Time, which is one of her procs, and you could basically press your, as you can see there, your 2, 3, and 4 ability at the same time, and you'd basically have Infinite Fever Time, which is a major DPS increase, and you would just annihilate everything. And Luna was incredibly broken, so what did they do? Just instead of nuking just the Luna leaderboards, they nuked the entire leaderboards and reset the entire leaderboards down to absolutely nothing again. So this was another time where they reset the leaderboards because of one specific Descendant. So they did it because of Luna. That's fine. And even with that, they introduced the lounge. Now, the lounge was something a lot of people were looking forward to. We have a quote from my king himself, 7TV, claiming there is not going to be God in his lounge with some of the stuff that are going to be going on in there. Sounds like a Diddy party to me. And in general, this was a very sought after feature. And a lot of people were looking forward to Lounge 2 being released, which the developers had so much confidence in the Lounge, they announced Lounge 2 being a thing before Lounge 1 was even released into the game. So that shows you the confidence. That shows you the confidence of the developers. Yeah, it was something that was truly something crazy, for sure. And this is definitely one of them things that I think was just fucking insane. And yeah, that was that. And then they end the month off with resetting the board, and that was the end of October. Now, the entire time they had been teasing slash convincing people that there's going to be a lounge and everything, and people were getting hyped, they were getting interested. So what happens the month after that? This is this is what happened then. So the biggest thing was the fact that September came with the sword slash the melee. Now, the swords were something that were incredibly hyped up. Even off the gameplay that we had seen, the swords looked incredibly promising, so on and so forth. I think that the swords, for the first time, had a promising look to them until we actually got our hands on them. Now, let's talk about the farm for the swords first. The farm for the swords was beautiful, in my opinion. I did like the grind. It was very grindy, and I do like that. I'm acknowledging that I liked it. A lot of people hated it because you would have to do approximately 800 runs to get all of your swords to 5 out of 5 fusions. Which, again, for me, not a problem. The rewards in Void Vessel 2 were actually quite beneficial. You'd get yourself Supply Coin, which does allow you to set yourself up for all of the Battle Pass weapons return, and then also give yourself a ton of Catalyst resources, which of course everyone is going to be crafting Catalyst. So overall, swords had a promising start to them, or a promising look to them, to say the least. And then we got our hands on them, and we realized how utterly useless they are. For your Descendants, for the majority of them being absolute skill beasts, swords just didn't play into the synergy at all. The closest thing we had was using it just as a sorry excuse, and even with full-on builds invested, swords were clunky, swords were horrible, swords were just, they were not worth it. Did I mention the Battle Pass exploit? I'll get around to that, because that was actually this month as well. It was a little bit before, actually, but I'll still talk about it now. Harris or Lepic? Lepic. Okay, back to topic. So, the swords were incredibly lackluster, until we found one use for them, and that was the dungeon boss in the next dungeon. Not this one, the one after. So, that goes to show how the swords went on release. They were incredibly weak, they did not provide speed buffs, they did not provide any DPS buffs, they had no synergy to them, and were basically there as dead weight. And for the farm, being one of the biggest farms in the game to get the swords, people were not satisfied at all. So then they buffed the swords, and even after buffing the swords, they were still lackluster. So they had speed buffs applied to them now, and then they basically made this to say, guys, we're sorry, we're gonna make better skins as well, which is, I expect nothing less from the devs, to be honest, at this point. But they buffed the damage on the swords to being over double for the shadow, and they buffed the Deus. Now the Deus had a good little change where you could annihilate everything with its unique slam. So the Deus became worthwhile, specifically the Deus. So the Deus even right now is the best sword for the Supermassive Receptor to nuke the boss, who has plenty of resistance. All Legion of Breach bosses or mobs are weaker to the Deus sword, so that is a good little thing to know. And the Deus had a use, or has a use in the game. The Shadow still has none of them. Then we had the Battle Pass bug. Basically, you do your daily challenges, and then if you teleport to a different location, which you would have to do 1,000,000 times over, you would basically just break the Battle Pass, and it just give you infinite levels every single time. So that was fun, to say the least. It was definitely an interesting video for sure. But yeah, then then we had the showcase of Ancestor mods in the same month. Oh my god, Ancestor mods in the same month were fucking insane. If you don't know about Ancestor mods, they're basically Riven mods from Warframe. You can double everything, break your Descendant, do everything, all of that, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, they were incredibly, incredibly broken, especially with the stat bonuses and so on, so forth that you could get. So you could absolutely break the daylights out of your build. The fact that they've been implemented into the game, yes, they are broken. I was not wrong. But at the same time, on October the 10th, they also added the Amorphous Material Pattern Machine, which would basically give you a ton of amorphous patterns that you had in your inventory, and you could open all hundreds or thousands of them in one singular sitting. If you had thousands of amorphs, you could open them in 1 second. So this was a very, very major remove the grind type of thing. So if you've been playing the game for months or even almost a year at this point, you basically had thousands of ammo sitting in your inventory that you've just never been bothered to open. This would open everything for you with no cost and give you all the rewards whilst you could skip the animation. You could literally set your ammos to open, go have a turbo wank in the back of your room, go to sleep, wake up, and if you had enough ammos, it'd still be opening them up for you. So it was a very big thing, or big step in quality of life towards people enjoying it. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the time the community has gotten everything nerfed. Like I said, Void Vessel came out on the 1st of October and got nerfed on the 8th of October. And the community do like to complain because they never want to build any of their descendants up, or they want their one descendant to do everything. If you want that, build Serena, which they kind of have done at this point, but build Bunny as well, because the electric condensed crit build can also do everything in the game. But in general, the game suffers from build diversity, and even with Ancestor mods, people are just using it for maximum DPS, which is kind of exactly what I said would happen. People saw Ancestor mods and saw it as a nice way to increase build variety, but it's not worked like that at all. And this was something I knew was going to happen anyways, because Ancestor mods in Warframe or Riven mods in Warframe had the exact same effect. Now, a lot of things in this game genuinely have changed, like balance has been changed, so on and so forth, and you know, it's just been like this since the start, and it's genuinely gravitated towards buffs. For example, weapons got heavily buffed as well and made weapons more worthwhile, but you keep going back and forth between weapon buffs and skill buffs, weapon buffs and skill buffs, and we're at a point now where Descendants are so strong that they need to buff the skills, and if the skill buffing doesn't work out to being very, very good, they are going to be astronomically cooked, because they admitted in an interview that they are too afraid to buff Serena, or they are too afraid to introduce any good weapons into the game, not just some, any good weapons into the game, because if they do, it makes Serena stronger. I posted an interview based off this exact interview, so if you do want to go have a look at that, it is this video on my YouTube channel over here. Just give me 1 second and I'm going to quickly get it up for you. But it's a video from over here. Interview. There you go. So it's this video over here. An interview into the minds of the developers for the first Descendant. But essentially they basically said, yeah, we're scared to run with Serena because Serena's going to make everything busted. And we don't want that. They do admit that they like playing Serena and the firepower is good, but just in general, they laughed at the Inés nerf because you gotta laugh to keep the pain away, and they're afraid of adding anything good. Any weapon that gets introduced into the game currently is already going to be nerfed. I've seen other weapons and stuff in the game that haven't been released yet and stuff, but they're already going to be nerfed because of Serena and stuff like that. Didn't you ask me to translate? Yeah, I did. And this is the interview you translated for me, actually. But, yeah, this in general is the future of the game. They can't release anything that they want to. They have literally been burdened by Serena since her release. Even Inés, after her becoming a disgustingly OP mobbing god. And they've still, even a year later, yet to break the curse. They keep buffing their other descendants and everything to the same level because they have the ideology of if everyone is broken, no one is broken, but it doesn't work like that. No matter how much you try spinning it on its head, it's not going to make your solution any more worthwhile if you do go down this route. Now, it comes to the end of October. So the end of October, here we are. So now we're reaching the 2-hour mark on this video. Holy shit. So let's move to October, or November, sorry. November, they introduced the Harris along with the Supermassive Receptor Dungeon, Ancestor mods, and there should have been a leaderboard reset. For those who don't know about Harris, Harris had a setup. Holy, Harris had a setup and a half. If I can find the video, I don't know if I can. I'm playing Serena, so this is definitely not the right video. Harris had a setup with Wall Crasher, with Bunny, or just in general, Harris had a setup where she was able to 100% strip everything with the use of battering ram. Now, basically, you'd build into a ton of defense, and then you just absolutely annihilate everything in terms of defenses and resistance for the boss. Harris could scale her defense up to millions, and even battering ram using 0.25 of like 7 million is still over a million strip. Nothing in the game had this level of resistance, so Harris immediately got nerfed. People did not complain about Harris's nerf, specifically because, well, what they should have done with Serena, they nerfed her immediately. And a lot of people built into Harris and got to experience it for like a few days, and then it was gone. That's what they should have done with Serena, and debatably the same with Ines, Freyna, and hell, even they should have nerfed Bunny back in preseason. But the truth being told, they did the right thing with Harris. Now Ajax is in a little bit of a similar conundrum where he can 100% strip the Grim Reaper, only the Grim Reaper though, with the electric resistance because of him being a Colossus. And there's a chance that Ajax might even be getting nerfed as well, based off some stuff that I've been hearing. Not 100% sure on it, but this dungeon as well, the Supermassive Receptor, had an absolute glaring thing as well, and that was Pattern Flores, or the boss at the end. This was the boss that you needed to use this Deus Sword on to absolutely annihilate the boss, otherwise you would kind of be cooked. It'd probably be better if I put some gameplay on for this, so let me quickly go to my channel. And I will put some Bunny gameplay on, because Bunny is the best Descendant in the game. Am I right, guys? Am I right? Okay, I'll shut up now. But basically, the truth being told, a lot of people just didn't like the way that this fight was, or just this dungeon was. A lot of people complained, and again, within 5 or 6 days, this dungeon got nerfed too. It wasn't even a difficult dungeon. The only thing was the boss had a little bit of HP at the end, which I don't think is necessarily a problem. A lot of people do not ever give themselves time to adjust to the content, but this boss and this dungeon also got nerfed to shits. Even the trash mobs got nerfed for some reason. And yeah, you'll see the recurring theme very vividly by now. Every time a new piece of content comes out, it gets nerfed within literally less than 1 week. Nobody has time to build up into it and enjoy themselves. Veteran players who have obviously got a massive inventory or been playing this game or understand how things work and put their time into it, take the time to min-max and test everything out. For others, we get very sick of nerfs because we make our videos in the first few days, and after that, we're kind of done. If I was to make a new video on Supermassive Receptor now, it would not be a very highly anticipated video, the same way if I was to do something with Forbidden Sanctuary. Once you release content, people want information on it immediately, they want guides, so on and so forth, and it's my job as a content creator to kind of basically do that. And when I do that, it basically gets undermined because 3 days later the content gets nerfed and my build is still relevant and still very valid, but you can clear it even faster, which makes the gameplay segment of my build look a little bit wet, or like a little bit meh, because, you know, you're not clearing it in an insanely fast time. Now, dungeon times vary depending on what dungeon it is, so on and so forth. There's a million bloody factors that go into like how fast you can clear a dungeon, knowing the spawns, running it 1,000 times over, all of that, blah, 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 blah. There's, you know, like I said, tons of things, right? And when the game gets nerfed so consistently, it just makes a lot of people quit. And I know plenty of several of sweaty people, and I'm going to call them sweats because they fully know they are, people that quite literally carried this game and carried leaderboard and hard innovated and figured out the tech and the exploits, or not really exploits, but figured out the tech to basically maximize your movement, make speedrunning the game so much easier and possible. They've all quit because why should they bother, especially if they know that the game's going to get nerfed? And this is the other thing that I also want to mention as well. A lot of people do get very sentimentally attached to their characters, but that doesn't mean your character needs to be the best in the game at all times. Hell, a lot of people have said to me, Alyssa, would you still play Bunny if they nerfed her, or you only care about Bunny because you know they're never going to nerf her? They could make Bunny the worst Descendant in an update tomorrow and I would still play her. I don't care. A lot of people get so sentimentally attached to their characters, and it's a bit worrying, to be honest. It's either that or it's your first looter shooter or stuff like that, but ultimately I just want this game to have true balance. I want fun mods to return, team compositions to return, and all of that to genuinely make it as the main focus for this game. Again, pushing the times a little bit forward. The Harris stuff, which Harris, bear in mind, broke every Descendant's run. still did not prompt the leaderboard reset. Harris could nuke the shit out of Wallcrasher and strip him to nothing, making him just a big bullet sponge and making him literally die in like less than 10 seconds. But Harris wasn't a problem in the developers' eyes enough to reset any of the leaderboards, which is absolutely ridiculous. We also did get that second collab, being the Bayonetta collab, so that was another example of a genuine interesting collab. Then Supermassive Receptor got nerfed, and that was the end of November. Come December now, because we're moving it up a month, December basically had the exact same treatment. We had for this December Ultimate Eugen came out, or Ultimate Twink I'm gonna call him. The Grim Reaper Abyss boss came out, and Forbidden Sanctuary has been released as well. 7 days later, Forbidden Sanctuary got nerfed. Well, 5 days later, the nerf got announced, and then 7 days later, the nerf released. See what I mean? Everything just gets nerfed. And the state of the game right now is very sorry, and it's very, very, very 50-50. If you were to tell me that the first Descendant dies this year, I would totally believe you. Do I want it to die? Of course I do not. And I know the developers probably will not watch this because it's a segment at the end of a 2-hour plus fucking video, but please make the right decisions, and please do focus on bringing back what truly made the first Descendant great. It wasn't the gooning, it wasn't selling skins every 2 fucking weeks that are half-assed and look like shit. It wasn't having every Descendant be so broken. It was the team composition, it was the genuine fun that we'd have when playing with friends, and it was the actual genuine excitement of new content. Every single dungeon has basically just been another let's go to point A, kill everything, point B, kill everything, mini boss, point A, point B, kill everything, and then a dungeon boss, and that's pretty much been it. Please bring back the style of 250% dungeons that would allow you to have to defend a point, something so on and so forth, and please make it different. You have announced a Breach mission in Axion coming in January, which kind of just sounds like Spec Ops with Colossi to me, which again would be so cooked. And if that's what it is, if it's just Axion Spec Ops, I promise you it's not going to do very well. Enzo's also due a rework. February looks like it's going to be a promising month, but I truly want the best for this game. And as someone who's quite literally dedicated my life, and I've done more than pretty much 99.99999% of your player base in the game in terms of completion, I've 60-catted every Descendant in the game. I genuinely experiment with builds so hard. I throw a lot of my own money into buying ancestors for the sake of testing. I make my sheets for ancestors. I try to do as much as I can for the game and for the community, and I do want to see this game succeed. But either currently the game is in a bit of a stalemate and it rides on the next few months of content, or the developers pull their socks up and we lock in and we have a good year coming for the future. I hope it does become a good year and this game has a long life and lives to prosper and everything, but currently I'm not going to be the one to doom post, but based off the trajectory from the last year, how there's been a few things that have been good every update, and then more things that have been a downside, I would say, mostly just Descendant buffs and content nerfs and stuff like that, and rebalance over quite literally nothing. It does put the game in a very big stalemate, and I do hope they break their own cycle and tell the community to suck it up and actually just get good and learn to play the game. Because if the game stays in the state it is now, there will not be a game left, and if the community doesn't ever give the developers a chance to make something fucking good, there's not going to be a game left either. These developers, I think, are part of the problem. I think these developers might not be the best developers for this game. The first Descendant of what it is of itself is a project for a game that has the potential to be one of the best games ever. It has the potential to truly be one of the best games ever, but I feel like the potential is in the wrong hands, and I feel like the developers that we have currently will never truly eat into utilizing what this game truly could be. And I'm just being completely honest with you guys, and I want the game to succeed just as much as you do. But there's definitely some fundamental problems like balance, power scaling systems, and just everyone feeling burned out from having to run the same shit 100 times. I don't have a problem with it, but a lot of people, even my own viewers, have said to me several times that, oh, I have to run this again and I can't be bothered. That's something I can completely understand. Add something in, or at least add 2 tiers of difficulty on release for all newer content that basically just gives people genuine choice and opportunity. There should be a hard mode or a extra hard mode in this game at this point. You've held it off for so long saying hard mode's going to be everything, but it's clear with the game's balancing there needs to be some form of an adjustment. You can't make a hard mode that's going to please someone who's just got into hard mode and please someone who's truly at the top of the game. If a player wants to go into a balls to the walls fighting for their absolute life setup, please make that a possibility and add something equivalent to Steel Path, if that's what you will call it or whatever, but there needs to be something more in terms of difficulty. And I don't just mean making everything have 100,000 HP. I don't mind it personally, but give us something else to do. Something like a fun mode with different varying rewards. Something like, I don't know, a maze mode, for example. You get to choose a Descendant, run around a maze, and you have to find specific boxes. And if you get the boxes, then you could, like, you know, get reward. You can get catalyst, you can get superconductive units, or just give it a maze challenge mode or a block challenge mode, for example. You go through specific rooms, or like parkour challenge and stuff like that. You have to go through obstacles, and you as a team can choose which Descendant you set forward. Let's say you've got an Enzo on your team, or sorry, you've got an Ajax on your team, a Bunny on your team, a Viesa and a Kyle on your team, and you have to tank something. You can send the Ajax into this challenge or something like that, or even Serena. And let's say you've got a challenge where you need to go from one point to the other of this map. There's going to be a bunch of mobs in the way. You can't use any abilities apart from a speed-based ability, or just step on a speed pad to get a speed boost or something. And, you know, having genuine fun off the block mods like that would genuinely benefit the game. A lot of people grind in this game, but there's no escape from grinding. And I know that it's a looter shooter, but you kind of wanted the lounge to be that, and I feel like the lounge missed the mark. So add some more fun mods in as an example. You've definitely shown that you can listen to the community before, so I urge you to listen now, please. Yeah, I'm kind of just, you know, cooked at this moment. I've been yapping for 2 hours straight, so forgive me, guys. But this is the closest thing to a history lesson a lot of people have gotten. A lot of people have come at various points in this game, and this is a true homage to the first Descendant and what this game truly was, and to the future of this game. I hope this game prospers, and thank you guys all so much for watching. If you've made it this far in the video, comment #developers, because I'd be very surprised if I see a #developers in the comments. This game has had so much success, and even just based on my notes, let me just show you my notes for this video. Oh my god, my notes are so cooked. I've put a lot of time into looking into everything in this, man. It was a big one. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. BGK Harlem, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you, man. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.